Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bronwyn if you are new here, and today I'm going to be talking through all of the roles that are offered for the Walt Disney World Disney College Program. I've done 2 Disney College programs, so I obviously know a lot about those 2 roles. I am by no means an expert on the Disney College Program or all of the roles that are offered, but I've had a lot of friends that have done a lot of different roles, and I've, living there, gotten to kind of see what some of the other roles are like and just hear from friends and that kind of stuff. So these are just my thoughts. Some people that love a role, somebody else may not, and vice versa. So take all of these with a grain of salt, please. And hopefully this just gives you a little bit more information about the roles if you are interested in applying. I have a screenshot of all of the roles from the actual application, and there are 4 roles that are considered high demand roles. They're in a separate section. They are quick service food and beverage, houseperson, custodial, and lifeguard. I've had a lot of friends that have been lifeguards, and it really is kind of mixed reviews. I know one of the best things about that role is the hours are pretty good. The way that most of the resorts split up their shifts is a morning shift and an afternoon shift. So Holly was a lifeguard and she basically worked 4 to 11 every day. Sometimes she would have a morning shift thrown in there, but 90% of the time it was 4 to 11. So it was nice that she kind of knew before schedule drop what she was going to get, or at least have an idea of what her options were. One of my roommates from my first program, Savannah, started out at Typhoon Lagoon as a lifeguard, which was a little bit different because obviously it is a water park. I think her training was a bit more chaotic and a little bit more stressful, just because a water park is a lot different than just 1 or 2 pools at a resort. But along with that, one of the drawbacks of working at one of the water parks is that they close, I don't think they close for the winter, but they have less hours and they don't need as much staff. So she got deployed along about October to one of the resorts and was at a resort for the rest of her program. So if you only want to be at one place, then lifeguard might be tricky. Everybody that I've talked to that was a lifeguard has made some of their best friends through their coworkers. I don't know why, because in my head lifeguarding is kind of an independent role, but everybody seems to make great friends. You get to be in the sun all day, which maybe you don't want to be, but you'll get a nice tan and you get to wear a bathing suit. You don't have to be in a hot and sweaty long pants all day, unless you have tattoos or something. Then you would have to wear pants and sweat. The training for lifeguarding is a little bit intense because obviously it's a very highly safety critical role. So they had a lot of training down at Mickey's Retreat, which is down by the complexes. It's a big pool and you have to learn all the stuff and be CPR certified. And so yeah, I remember my roommates literally coming home and having to study and practice on us to make sure that they were gonna pass their test. The next is custodial, and my roommate Haley was a custodial cast member. She was in Fantasyland at Magic Kingdom. Now, a lot of people when they hear the words custodial are no, I would never do that. I don't want to clean up people's trash, whatever. And that's totally valid, because at the end of the day, you are cleaning. That's what custodial is doing, is they're making sure that the parks or resorts and everything is show ready at all times. So if you don't like cleaning, custodial is probably not the role for you. Custodial does though get tons and tons of guest interaction. They are all over the parks and are for the most part working independently, so they have the opportunity, the sun went away, they have the opportunity to talk to guests and make a lot of magic for guests and just assist guests with all of their questions and directions. So it's a good thing to know your park really well if you're working in a park and need to point guests in the right direction. You also get to pin trade as custodial, and we've been new, I'm obsessed with pin trading, so that in itself is a great time. Another good thing is that custodial is a global role, which means you can pick up a shift anywhere. It is not specific to one park or one location. If you work Haley worked Fantasyland in Magic Kingdom and would pick up shifts in Animal Kingdom because she liked working there better. So you do have the opportunity to work anywhere you want. You don't have to just be stuck in your one location if you don't want to. Quick service food and beverage is another one that I've heard a lot of people have kind of mixed reviews on. I've had a couple friends do quick service, and for the most part, they all loved it. It's very fast paced. I've heard the hours, depending on your location, can be very long and very crazy, but overall, I really think that the biggest maybe drawback of this role is really just going to be where your location is, because there are some locations that are so great and so fun and you know, probably the one that like everybody that gets quick service wants. And then there are other places that are maybe not as exciting or are just like extra busy and have a lot of people coming through there every day. Obviously all of the roles are based on your location, but I think quick service is definitely one that is very location specific. So the last of the high demands is house person or housekeeping. I knew one girl that did this, and she said that she had a lot of fun in the role, but it was a lot of hard work. You have very quick turnaround time in how fast you need to get like rooms ready and cleaned and everything, and for the most part you're doing it by yourself. And so she would have like a chunk of time where she had to clean a certain amount of rooms, and if the rooms aren't clean, then like that's an issue. So I know that she really enjoyed it, and it was fun to be able to like do kind of like your own thing, and you don't get a lot of guest interaction with that role. So if you're like stressed or nervous or don't want to talk to guests, maybe that's a good one for you. But yeah, the biggest thing she said about that one was that it was a lot of hard work, but she still like obviously loved it and had a lot of fun. So now we're gonna get into the just like additional roles as they call them, which is everything else, and they're not high demand. So the first is attractions, which is basically like ride operations. Attractions also, like what falls under that umbrella other than just rides, is slide operations, which is like at the water parks and that kind of stuff. My roommate Madison did that. Also, parking is part of attractions, at least for Walt Disney World. I don't think it is for Disneyland. So I think one of the like most exciting things about attractions is that like you could be working your favorite ride, or like if you're somewhere like Tower of Terror or the Jungle Cruise that's like very specific like personality, kind of like you have to like kind of play a character, or like I know everybody used to want Great Movie Ride because like it's such a big like interactive one. One of the drawbacks of attractions is that you can only work at your set location. All of the attraction roles are very safety critical because obviously like you're operating these big machines basically, and you need to make sure that like you're doing everything right, because if somebody gets hurt on a ride, that's not good. So they are safety critical, and so because of that you can only work at your location. Some places do have multiple rides like within their location. Like I had a couple of friends that did like Fantasyland West, and they did like 3 different attractions. Like I think it's like Peter Pan, Small World, and maybe one other one that maybe like PhilharMagic or something, I don't remember. But so there are some locations that you do have maybe a couple options within your location, whereas others like Rock and Roller Coaster, you're only going to be working at Rock and Roller Coaster. There is sometimes the opportunity to get cross-trained. I had a friend that was stationed at Rivers of Light, and a couple months into her program got cross-trained at Expedition Everest. So then she could like pick up both places and would get scheduled at both. So sometimes you do have the opportunity to get trained in more than one spot, but for the most part it is just the one attraction that you're going to be working. Next is Bell Services / greeter. I actually don't really know anything about this role, so I'm just gonna spitball and say what I kind of think it is and what I think some of the good and bad things may be about it. To me, I think one of the most exciting things about that role would be that you get a lot of guest interaction, because if you are dealing with bags and greeting guests as they come into your resort, then obviously you're going to be talking to guests and interacting with them. So that's another fun thing if you don't want to be like in a park or somewhere that's maybe super busy all the time and very high paced. I feel like maybe Bell Services, because you're going to be at a resort, I believe. I don't think there's anywhere that you could work that wouldn't be a resort, but like I don't know, I could be 100% wrong, correct me if I am, but it would be a bit more of like a steady, slower pace. So maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's not for you, but those are my thoughts on it. I think when I applied one of the times, I put like moderate interest for it because my sister somehow hyped it up to me and said that maybe I would like it because I think she had a friend that would do it. So if you like talking to people, then it's probably a good one for you. The next is Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique and Pirates League. This is one that I think every time I've applied, I've put like high interest for because I think that this role would be so fun. I actually don't know anybody that's gotten this role. I know that it's one that's harder to get, but I just think like you literally get to turn kids into princesses and pirates all day. Like that sounds so magical. I'm sure that because you're turning kids into princesses and pirates all day, like it can be not magical at times. Like if a kid doesn't, you know, want to get turned into that, or they're just like not about it, or the parents are kind of being overbearing about it, then like that would get tricky. But overall, that one just seems like so fun. I've heard a lot of people though say that when they put interest for that, like they'd only want to do it if they got to work in the castle, because Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique has a location in the castle as well as at Disney Springs, and then I believe Pirates League is only in like next to Pirates of the Caribbean and Adventureland. So if you don't want to work at Disney Springs, well, first of all, you really shouldn't care where you work because, like, it's all gonna be fine. But if that's a big thing that, like, you don't want to work at Springs, like, you would only want to do it if you get to work at the castle, then, like, maybe that's not the role for you. But I know that that's one that, like, I think I would have so much fun with that. Also, if you don't love interacting with kids, then, like, that's probably not the best one for you because 95% of your day is gonna be interacting with children. The next is bus greeter, and I've heard a misconception that people think that, like, if you're a bus greeter, then you're, like, driving the buses, and that's not true. That's a different role. But I, again, don't really know a ton about bus greeter. I know there's a guy that I had, like, traditions with that had gotten that role and was stationed at Transportation and Ticket Center, and I never really heard anything past that about if he liked it or not. I do know that that one requires a lot of standing outside, so Florida's hot. That's maybe a drawback, but also you learn to deal with Florida heat. Like, that's gonna be kind of a drawback maybe for any role because most roles are outside. So again, I don't know a ton about bus greeter, but I do know you're not driving the buses. Next is character attendant. I personally think being a character attendant would be a ton of fun because you get to work with characters all day. So yeah, that's definitely, like, one of the good things about that role is that you get to work a lot with characters, meet a ton of characters, and just, like, I personally, like, love watching other people's interactions with characters. So, like, that's literally what you get to do, is stand there and watch people's interactions. I think some of maybe the drawbacks to this role are that one of the big things people get scared about is having to, like, close lines and making sure that the character leaves when they are supposed to. That can be stressful, and a lot of guests get mad if they really wanted to meet a character and Anastasia and Drizella are about to leave for the rest of the day and they miss their opportunity. So that's something that, you know, they kind of have to deal with, as well as if there's any issue with, like, an interaction between, like, a guest and the character, like, making sure that the character safety is, like, the most important thing. So you have to, like, be, like, hyper attention. Is that a word? I don't know. Very into, like, paying attention to what's going on to make sure that everybody is safe and good. But overall, I think the character attendant would be so much fun. The next is character performer, and I'm not really gonna talk a lot about that one just because, like, character integrity, not gonna ruin that, but yeah, I think we all been knew that, like, I really want to work in entertainment, so, like, I would love to be a character performer. Yeah, I feel like you can guess on your own what some of the, like, good and bad things about that role would be, so just, like, figure that one out on your own. Next is children's activities, which I know is another one that is a very hard role to get. Basically, children's activities is, like, out at all of the resorts and are, like, engaging children in fun activities. Like, they'll have tie-dye or coloring or dance parties, and children's activities are the ones that are in charge of running that. So if you love kids, I think that that is a very fun and exciting role. Maybe one of the drawbacks to it is that you've got to have very, like, kind of like character attendant, like, hyper attention is not the word, but we're gonna use it anyway because I don't know what to say. And just making sure that, you know, at that moment you're kind of responsible for people's kids. If their parents are, like, sitting by the pool and their kid runs over to color some coloring book or something, like, in that moment you're responsible for those children, so making sure that they are safe and you're paying attention and doing everything to, like, make sure the kid is good. Yeah, that's not really a drawback, but it may be if, like, it's just kind of like a safety thing that you need to be aware at all times of what's going on. The next is convention guide, which is another one that I don't really know anything about, other than it's only offered for the Advantage program. I don't know if that's because of when conventions happen, or if that's just, like, the training that's required. They want you there for longer because the training is so long. I don't really know, but convention guide is a role that is offered. The next is costuming, and I actually had a friend that did costuming and absolutely loved it. One of the drawbacks, I guess, to this role is that you are working backstage, so you're not really getting any interaction with guests, and you're not, you know, on stage, like, in that capacity. However, working backstage can be just as magical as working on stage, and it's still super fun and is a very, like, I feel like it would be a very fulfilling role because so many people, obviously, like, everybody on stage is in a costume, absolutely everybody, so they are the ones that are, like, helping to make that magic happen, to make sure that everything is show ready and how it should be and just looking great. So I think if you are like into costuming, I'm not super like passionate about like costume design or anything like that, but if you are, that would probably be a really fun role for you. The next is front desk, and my roommate Taylor, about halfway through her program, got moved to front desk at the boardwalk and absolutely loved it. I think front desk takes a very specific kind of person to work that job. You are dealing sometimes with a lot of like unhappy guests, because if there's like an issue with their room or they had a bad day in the parks, then the person at the front desk is who they're gonna come yell and complain to. Front desk does have the opportunity though to make a lot of magic for guests and like have a lot to do with guest recovery. So like they're kind of in the clear on that like they're the people that kind of can do something if something goes wrong. To me, one of the drawbacks is just that it's a lot of pressure, because people expect a lot of their resort and they expect a lot of like Walt Disney World in general, and front desk is kind of the ones that are going to be responsible for making sure that like everything goes smooth for somebody. In my head, guest relations and front desk are very similar. It's just that like guest relations is actually in the park, and obviously like they're doing more and have way more control over like everything that's happening, but front desk is kind of the like resort version of guest relations. The next is merchandise, and I worked merchandise, so I feel like I can say some things about it. One of the best things about merchandise is that you do have the opportunity to work anywhere on property. The only thing that is tricky about that though is that some locations require specific training. For me, I worked in Africa and we sold literally 1 bottle of wine, so we had to be like alcohol trained, and we also had a case line, so we had to be food safety trained. I literally don't think there's anywhere else on property that has those 2 trainings, so it was very hard for me to try and trade shifts with people if they like hadn't already had those trainings or anything, because yeah, so like there's a lot of places that I had wanted to work. Like I tried so hard to switch with somebody for a confectionery shift because I was like, oh, they're food safety trained, like I'm good, but they don't sell alcohol there, so they weren't RVP trained, so I couldn't switch with them, and I was very upset because I was like, the only place that I wanted to work. Overall, merchandise is a really fun role. I think for me, it was a little bit different just because I had previously done a program and a different role and liked that role better. So I was kind of comparing everything in merchandise to that role. I also didn't love my location, so like I made the most of it and I still had a great time, but I always wonder like what it would have been like if I had worked a different location, or if I had just been able to like trade some shifts and change it up every now and then. Merchandise is definitely a popular role for CPs, and honestly like I had a great time doing it. I would definitely do it again. Like it's not super hard, you get a lot of guest interaction, you get to pin trade, which is just the best. And yeah, it's a global role, so you can work anywhere. The next is Monorail, and I believe that this one is kind of like bus greeter, where if you are working Monorail, you are not the one that is driving the actual monorail. It's like when you get to the TTC and you're like going up to like the monorail platforms and there's people like telling you which way to go and everything, that's the Monorail role. Don't really know much about it past that, but to my knowledge, they are not the ones that are actually driving the monorail. The next is PhotoPass, and I think I could go on and on and on about how PhotoPass is literally the best role. I know I'm biased because I was PhotoPass, but like literally just, I absolutely loved PhotoPass. I think for me, I guess maybe the drawbacks are that it's really hot and you stand outside for a really long time. I mean, that kind of goes along with any role though, so like that one's not really role specific. You also are independent a lot of the time, so like you have to be ready and creative on your own. You also get stopped by a lot of guests and you are expected to know everything. A lot of the time you are the first person that they see somewhere, because for the most part PhotoPass is literally just like standing in the middle of the street. So like if they have a question about, oh, what time is this? How do I make a fast pass? Anything really, then you're the person that gets asked. So it's really important that you like know stuff, because you don't have any form of communication to talk to anybody. I really think that PhotoPass should have radios, because the number of times that like I had an emergency or like my camera broke or a guest needed immediate attention, I don't have any way of contacting anybody. So like that was tricky. But PhotoPass literally like you get to take pictures of people all day. Do you know how fun that is? Like people seeing Cinderella Castle for the very first time, for the millionth time, them meeting their favorite characters. at least for me in Magic Kingdom, like we had a lot of freedom that like, oh, I just took engagement pictures of this couple, and if I didn't have a line, I could be like, let's go walk around for a minute and have a little photo shoot with them because like they just got to experience something special. Like PhotoPass is literally just like the best. PhotoPass is also a global role. Technically, I didn't pick up any shifts anywhere. I had character training in Epcot. So I guess technically, I mean, I worked with Daisy and Donald and Snow White in Epcot. So like that counts. And then during like our very first training, we went to studios and we took pictures like of each other. So like, does that count? Maybe. I didn't take any photos of guests while I was in studios, but I was in full costume with a Disney camera with my Disney name tag on, so like I think it counts. Epcot, like we took pictures of guests meeting characters. I never worked in Animal Kingdom, which is, I tell myself that's why I got Animal Kingdom for merchandise. They were like, she hasn't worked there, we should probably slap her in there. That's 100% not true, but I just like tell myself that as a joke. I worked in Magic Kingdom and literally like I got paid to watch Happily Ever After every single night. I got to go to every single, well, I was off Tuesdays and Tuesdays was a party night, but whatever. I got to go basically to every single Halloween party, every single Christmas party. Like, PhotoPass is the best, literally the best. I had great management, great leaders, great coordinators, great coworkers. Like, I cannot say enough good things about PhotoPass. The next is recreation attractions. So I probably messed it up in the beginning when I was talking about attractions, and Madison probably did recreation attractions, which is, does that include anything outside of slide operations? I don't really know. Recreation attractions is apparently a thing though. If anybody knows anything about it, comment down below. The next is Cedar, and my sister for her college program was technically, back then it was like considered full service food and beverage, but I guess they just like changed the name to Cedar, but it's the same thing. She did it at Liberty Tree Tavern and absolutely loved it. She had great coworkers and just like literally had a blast. So Cedar is definitely one that I don't think it's like totally unheard of to get that role, but it is more competitive than some of the other ones. It requires a lot of guest interaction, sometimes dealing with a lot of unhappy guests. But overall, like, you are basically the hostess. Every now and then maybe you have to deal with food a little bit. Like, my sister would have to like roll napkins or like put butter into like the little ramekins, but like it wasn't actual food prep. Yeah, there's that. She got to wear a fun little costume with a bonnet because Liberty Tree Tavern. But yeah, she really enjoyed the role. I know a lot of people really like it and have a lot of fun, and you get a lot of guest interaction and just get to like hang out, play around, and yeah, seat some people at their table for a reservation that they're very excited about. The next is Vacation Planner. And again, I don't know a lot about Vacation Planner other than they are the ones that like sell tickets. Like there's little ticket booths. There's like the guest relations booths outside, but then there's also the ones where you like actually buy tickets, and that's part of vacation planning. There's probably more that they do than just that, but that's really all that I know that they do. Don't know any good or bad things about it. So that's vacation planning. Last but not least is, of course, another one I don't know a lot about, and that is watercraft, which is basically like all of the boats that take you between parks to the resorts to Disney Springs, all that fun stuff. I think some people can get trained to actually drive the boats during their college program. Every time, for the most part, a lot of the boats, at least the bigger ones, have 2 cast members on them, and there's like one that's driving, and then normally the other one is like the CP that like is the one opening and closing the gate, making sure that like everybody's seated and safe or whatever. So yeah, again, don't know a ton about watercraft, but like I know that one is also a bit competitive and a lot of people love it. So if you like boats, maybe that's the role for you. So that is every role that is offered. I also just hit my face as I did that. We're gonna ignore that, but that's every role that is offered at Walt Disney World for the Disney College program. The Disneyland program has much less roles, and they're like whole how they list things is a little bit different. So if you're interested in the Disneyland program, I'm really sorry, I don't know anything about it and I can't help you. But Walt Disney World got you covered. I hope that this video helped you some, or got you excited about your role, or, you know, maybe got you a little bit interested in a role that you didn't really know anything about and now you want to put interest for, because all the roles honestly are great and you're gonna have the time of your life. Your program is what you make it. So don't stress about your role, don't stress about your location. It's all gonna work out like it's supposed to. I have 2 videos on my channel, one that's all about merchandise and one that is all about PhotoPass, which I'm gonna link down below. So if you are mega interested in one of those roles or you already got offered one of those, hopefully those videos will be able to help you, give you a more in-depth look about what those roles are really like. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to comment on here, DM me on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. I will do my best to respond. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all again real soon.